We have lost prospective clients because of one word, and that word is intermediary. If you're buying or selling in Wyoming and this word enters the conversation, you might feel like something just changed for the worse, like your agent became something less. That's not what happened, but I understand the confusion. So let's dig into this. A buyer approached me once about a home I had listed. I arranged for him to see the home, and he liked it, but when it was time to make an offer, he called me and told me he was ditching me for another agent to get his own, quote, representation. This buyer wanted an agency relationship. If he had worked with me, I would have guided he and the seller through the transaction as an intermediary, not as an agent, according to Wyoming law. An agent represents you. An agent has a legal duty to advocate for your interests exclusively, to negotiate on your behalf, and to put your goals first. This is the relationship most people expect when they hire a real estate professional. Wyoming law doesn't allow dual agency. So when a buyer and seller are working with real estate professionals in the same brokerage, whether it's the same person or two different people in that brokerage, they enter an intermediary relationship. An intermediary facilitates the transaction without representing either party. It's a neutral position designed for fairness. So what is representation anyway? I've asked prospective clients this question directly, and they couldn't explain it even though it was something they seemed to value. If you think representation is like the coach in your ear telling you exactly how to get up and pummel your opponent on the other side of the ring, you've got real estate all wrong. In fact, you have negotiation wrong in general. Real estate transactions are about finding that common ground for mutual benefit, and combative clients are some of the most difficult to work with. Case in point, I represented a seller once who became extremely embittered when a buyer came directly to me instead of using another agent. The seller and I, let's call him George, had discussed the intermediary relationship before signing listing documents. But all George could see was me, the agent he had hired, sharing my professional expertise with the buyers, who he routinely framed in adverse terms as his opponents. Even though I was operating fairly, professionally, and trying to bring both parties into an agreement that was good for everyone, he felt betrayed. So let's pause and examine the mindset. George didn't appreciate that I had started as his agent and was now an intermediary lending my expertise to the buyers as well. He expressed that he didn't think it was right for him to be paying me to help them. And yet, he had already agreed to offer a buyer's agent commission, which was the wise thing to do. Clearly, he was okay paying someone to help the buyers. The money he had hired me with was not money he had in his account. It was money that would never enter his account. It was money coming from the buyers at closing. So while commission comes from the seller's column on the balance sheet, it kind of feels like the buyers were the ones who paid me. And there's the trouble with getting caught up in a singular way of looking at things. On paper, George's home sale went extremely well. When most other homes on the market were dropping their listing prices, we never had to. We sold for an excellent value. George benefited from my typical commission discount when I'm doing the work for both sides of a transaction. In the end, I kind of had to drag George kicking and screaming to a very successful sale. And after closing, when I thanked him for the opportunity to serve him, all he could do was express his disappointment in me. Well, I'm sorry and you're welcome. I don't know what else to say. This was a complete failure to understand the fairness and benefits of the intermediary relationship, even though we discussed it many times. Here's the truth. When you shift to intermediary, the label changes, the work doesn't. As an intermediary, we still maintain the same professionalism, offer the same industry expertise. We still present and explain offers. We still guide you through the negotiation process and help structure the deal. We coordinate inspections, appraisals, and closing. We're still there every single step of the way. What we can't do is advocate for you over the other party, or vice versa. If a buyer says, I'm willing to pay over asking price, I can't tell the seller. If the seller says, I would sell for a lot less than list price, I can't tell the buyer. I have to treat both sides with equal care and discretion. And here's what many people miss. We already do all of this under an agency relationship. Good real estate professionals don't win deals by crushing the other side. We win by structuring transactions that work for everyone. The intermediary label includes everything ethical brokerages already do by default. Whether you work with us as an agent or intermediary, your experience will almost always be identical. We've closed dozens of in-office transactions with clients who are extremely satisfied with the outcome. And so, what's the actual difference if it all feels the same? Here it is. As your agent, we are required to share with you any knowledge of the other party that would give you an advantage. So if you're a seller and I knew an interested buyer had just inherited a huge sum of money, I would be required to tell you because that plays into the buyer's means and motivations to your advantage. Guess how often we have this type of knowledge available to share? Almost never. So the buyer from the first story I told went and got representation with another agent, but he didn't get an advantage because that agent didn't know anything useful about the sellers. You want to hear the perfect intermediary scenario? Here it is. I was working with both the buyer and seller on a transaction. When we got under contract, the buyer said, "Thank you for presenting us with strategies that allowed us to get a great price on this home." The seller said, "Thank you for bringing us a great offer. It's so good we don't even feel the need to counter it." The sellers then said, "You're doing such a great job, we're glad you got both sides of this one." That right there is the embodiment of what the intermediary role should be. Both sides win. Most transactions don't need fierce advocacy like that boxing coach in your corner. They need competence, clarity, and someone who knows how to close without creating unnecessary conflict. That's what you get with an intermediary. If you do an in-house transaction with Pinedale Properties, the label changes, your experience won't. Our expertise doesn't depend on whether we're called an agent or an intermediary. It depends on whether we know this market, understand the process, and treat people professionally. If you're working with us or any brokerage in Wyoming, ask us to explain this before you sign any documents. Understand what intermediary means, why it exists, what you can expect. If you have any more questions, just give us a call.